Welcome back here to X's and Bros on the Michigan Sports Network. Danny Cahill, Ryan Elke, Anthony Bellino, all joining you. Join us now. Our good buddy who typically joins us on a Tuesday morning, but this week we had to audible a little bit. It's a Wednesday. Our good friend John Wagner. Find him on Twitter at John Wagner Sport. Covered the Detroit Tigers minor league system for a couple of decades. Also, a member of the National Football Foundation, the Football Writers Association of America. Johan, my good friend, how are you? How's life? How are things, partner?
Well, that extra morning of rest, Anthony, has made all the difference. I am up, I'm chipper, I'm ready for action. I'm also just as mellow as can be. I mean, what you got for me today, Anthony? What do you got?
Well, I got a couple things, and I wanted to get to a couple of the headlines surrounding our local baseball team. People might know them, the Detroit Tigers. They're kind of a big deal. They've got a pretty an important season coming up for some, maybe a little bit more important than for others. But we'll get to that in a moment, because I have to ask you about what's going on there at the University of Michigan with Jim Harbaugh. It feels, John, and I'm not going to ask you anything specific about it, but it feels like this is the time in which a college program like Michigan, coming off of back-to-back Big Ten championships, being able to get to the college football playoff, being able to beat the rival Ohio State, it feels like we shouldn't need any of this nonsense with the head coach and a guy who said he promised that we weren't going to go through this again. But yet here we are going through things again. He finally, the university president has to get involved, and they allegedly get a deal done. And, Santa Ono, the president of the University of Michigan, notifies the fans via Twitter that he spoke to Jim Harbaugh and he will be enthusiastically coaching Michigan for the upcoming 2023 season. It feels like a time with NIL and everything else. This should be like a golden opportunity to get everything. I don't know. To me, this feels off that we're doing this in this period of time.
Well, that's interesting. To me, this is like the time it would happen. If you're a Michigan fan, this is the time you would hope it would happen, because you would you would hope for a long regular season that's full of success that leads you to the BCS championship round. So you're having to recruit and play games that matter on New Year's Eve, and if you're lucky, you can play another one a week later for a national title. So you don't want any of that distraction happening before that time. I mean, if he's got free time before that, that's a bad sign. That means you're not playing for a national title, and that he's not a popular and wanted coach. So to me, it's like, yes, I understand Michigan fans don't want him to go, but don't you want him to be wanted? Don't you want to have a guy who others basically want to have as well? I mean, this is, it's like having the fancy car. Part of the reason you have the fancy car is that others could be admirous and envious of what you've got. So I understand you don't like the sturm and drying of potentially losing him, but don't you want a coach who's wanted?
I mean, yes, I want a coach that's wanted, but at the same time, it feels like this should be an era where he should be focused on everything else, because he gave a commitment. He said that last year he wasn't going to do it, and I feel like with NIL and everything else, the transfer portal, like I just feel like we're missing an opportunity. Maybe I'm looking too far into it, and I'm in over my head when it comes to this feeling of, man, this should be a golden era of Michigan football. Instead, we're pitter-pattering around with a football coach. Although I am a fan of the fact that NFL teams have shown interest in our coach. That's always a good sign, like you said.
Yeah, I would disagree with you. I mean, coaches, as a general rule, are going to say things that they're going to make bets that their checks can't cover. You know what I'm saying? I remember a coach who shall remain nameless, but we were talking, and one time out of the blue, he said to me, "Whatever you do, if I'm a candidate for a job, don't ask me about it." And I started chuckling because I'm thinking, Coach, if your name is listed as a candidate for a job, it's my job to ask you about that. And his response was, then don't bother calling me because I'm not going to take your calls. And his point was to try and avoid saying something that was going to come back and haunt him, as Harbaugh has done, obviously. If you're a Bowling Green fan from back in the day, you remember this was a few, well, now decades ago. There was a famous coach of Bowling Green who said, "I'm not leaving. We have unfinished business." And then Urban Meyer got the job at Utah.
That's what I was going to say. Uncle Herbs. I was going to say it.
And there are still Bowling Green fans who hold that unfinished business line against Urban Meyer. It's like, well, you coming back to BG now? You finally take care of that unfinished business? It's hard because we're demanding, we, the media in this instance, are demanding answers and responses, and, coaches who are recruiting and trying to get people to, transfer to their school and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, are looking at other jobs, are trying to say, "Oh, I'm not leaving," while my basically proxy is negotiating me leaving and seeing if it's going to happen or not. This
proxy,
is part of the
good
gig.
word choice.
Thank you. This is part of the gig. Okay, if you don't want to be part of the gig, don't hire a popular coach. Just don't. Then you don't have this worry. If you hire a coach who's popular, you're going to have this worry. Now, less so at the big hitter schools, but it still happens, as you can see at Michigan. Harbaugh is wanted by the NFL. There are other places to go. I mean, remember that even Nick Saban, who had a great job at LSU, left that job to take the Dolphins job. And, he struggled there and went to Alabama, yada, yada. But
how'd that work out for him?
Not well. Well, ultimately, extremely well. He seems to be doing well at Alabama by all accounts. The NFL did not treat him well, though. But you understand my point.
Indeed.
I mean, coaches are hired to either be fired or to be hired away. That's the nature of the business. I hate to say I never or I always, because the moment you say never and always, exceptions pop up. But fairly regularly, you're going to see coaches leave for other jobs. They see new hills to climb. They see new achievements to achieve, and that's how they're driven. So I got to be honest. I mean, if I'm a Michigan fan, frankly, I'm happy that he's wanted by others. If he's wanted by others, there are going to be kids who want to play for him too.
Mm-hmm.
There are going to be kids who want to say, "Man, this Harbaugh may have something to it. Let's go to Michigan and play for him." Frankly, and this is an aside that as a Michigan fan, you could probably answer better than me, Anthony. Does Michigan generally get a lot of transfers? I mean, everybody is dipping a toe in that now more than ever that the transfer rules have changed. Do they? I mean, they don't make their living on that, though, do they?
No, they don't make their living on it. And it's one of those things that, they, of course, you'll accept a transfer, Yabi Okoye, who ended up transferring using his fourth transfer now. He was originally a five-star prospect that had committed to Alabama. Then, he ended up at Michigan because of Biff, and then Biff left, so he left too. He's found a new home. It's just one of those things. They're not going to make their money in the transfer portal. I don't think they're going to add like everybody else if they think they can get better in a position, but it's not something where you're going to see the meat and the potatoes of the roster. That's you want to build that from the inside. I think the transfer portal is a lot like how professional teams would view free agency. Build through the draft, which would be your recruiting period, and then you sprinkle in from the portal your free agency, if you will.
You fill holes.
Yeah, some areas you think you can get some depth or get better.
Strong at this position, I got to find a guy. Yeah, I mean, I could be proven wrong, and I'm sure that if I'm proven wrong when I say this next,
somebody will let you know.
Yeah, oh, there's no doubt. I just don't see a USC, and that's the school that comes to my mind, that really leaned heavily on the transfer portal last year. I don't think they're going to repeat that. I mean, they're going to get their share of kids, I think, but I just don't see that repeating that. That they had, I want to say 19. I don't think the number is going to be that big. They've got, what quarterback is going to transfer in there knowing that Caleb Williams is in front of him? So there's one position that's filled. And I mean, heck, I know they have 11 openings on defense probably, but I I just don't. I see that being more cyclical. New coaches who have to come in and instead of, well, I need a year or two to get my guys in the program, it's I need a transfer portal and a year of recruit to get my guys into the program. It is a speeding up of the process more than a changing of the process.
John Wagner, join us right now. I do want to shift gears here to Major League Baseball. Obviously, you spent a lot of time. You and I did in press boxes across minor league baseball, John. The AAA level is going to, they are going to institute the Robo umpire at home plate. This is up to AAA now for 2022, one step away from Major League Baseball. As we see that the AAA level being the guinea pigs of everything. And, hey, look, the Robo umpires, I don't know. They call them Robo umpires. What really is this? Is this just like how we get the Fox tracks at home, or, we're watching Bally Sports Detroit, or if you're watching Big Fox or watching a game on Turner, they all have the strike zone on the screen. Why wouldn't MLB just use the same thing?
Here's the thing, and I was talking with somebody the other day about this very thing. Having that box on the screen is really, really misleading because the strike zone isn't a square. And I shouldn't have said the box on the screen. I should say a square, or actually a rectangle, depending on the hitter. It's not a rectangle on the screen. It is a box. And the part that we don't get is not is it just that front part of the plate. It goes all the way to the back of the plate, all 17 inches. And to belabor a point, a strike using the quote-unquote Robo ump is any time a ball clips that box that represents the strike zone, not a square, not a rectangle, but a box. So, and here's the example. This is the one that's going to take some adjusting to, okay? Let's say somebody throws a really sharp breaking curve, called a 12 to 6, because if you look at it on the clock, it starts where the 12 is and drops straight down to the 6. That's a 12 to 6 curveball. Let's say someone throws a curve like that, and it breaks so sharply down that it bounces on home plate. Well, that's got to be a ball, right? The ball bounced on home plate. It's got to be a ball, right? If it touches the strike zone, that box that is the strike zone, at any point on the way down to bouncing on home plate, that's a strike, baby. That is a strike. And there are going to be all different kinds of things that happen like that are going to take some getting used to by players, pitchers and hitters both, by fans. They're going to see the ball bounce on the plate and suddenly an umpire calls strike and they're going to go, what in the world are they talking about? And they're right. Now, I got to tell you though, Anthony, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of commandeering the conversation. There is a more interesting concern to me than that. And trust me, that's a concern. That's going to take some getting used to.
Well, what's your concern? Yeah, do share.
The bigger concern is that there are going to be two different ways to use the Robo ump.
Ooh.
Okay? One way is that the Robo ump calls every pitch. And from what video I've seen from the Atlantic League, it takes a little getting used to also, but it's not terrible. What happens is the pitcher pitches, the batter doesn't swing, So it's up to the Robo ump to call whether it's a ball or strike. There's a delay for a second or two because it takes the Robo ump a second to figure out, did it cross the plate, yes or no? And then it has to send that signal, whether it did or didn't, down to an umpire who's behind home plate, who, in quotation marks, calls the pitch a strike or ball. He doesn't really call it. He's relaying the information from the Robo. So it's pitcher throws, zip, ball. You have to wait for that pitch to be called by the Robo ump down to the umpire at home plate.
That will take the timing is going to throw some folks off.
Going to slow down just a tad, not terrible, but that it's going to slow down a little. But that's only one style, okay? There is a second potential style here, and that is we don't use the Robo ump for every pitch. We use the Robo ump for pitches that are challenged by either the hitter or the pitcher.
Ooh.
So in other words, there's an umpire behind home plate per usual, and every pitch he calls it a strike or ball, just the game we've gotten used to over hundreds of years. With one difference. He makes a call, and one side or the other disagrees with the call because, you can't please everybody with a pitch call. You're either going to make a pitcher happy or a hitter happy. So what then happens is that pitcher or hitter who's unhappy can step out or step away from the rubber and say, challenge. And then it's going to go up to the Robo ump, kind of like a tennis match. You've seen the linesman makes a call, someone challenges it, and they go up to the computer to see, well, okay, did that ball actually touch the line or not?
Mm-hmm.
In this instance, did the ball actually cross into that box that's the strike zone or not? And so there are challenges available. And that part of the game, I'm not going to lie to you, it actually honestly scares me. Because if you have an umpire behind home plate who's calling pitches a certain way, and, maybe they're calling a strike, it has to be fully in the zone. Batters and pitchers that are smart can adjust to that. The problem becomes, well, I'm unhappy with that one call. I'm going to go to the Robo ump, who's going to adjudicate it differently, potentially, and suddenly a pitch that was been a strike all game long is suddenly challenged and it becomes a ball. Or vice versa. The pitch that has not been a strike all game long, this guy complains about it, Robo ump says it is. And that can really turn a lot of at-bats. I mean, you're not going to do that on the 1-0 pitch of your first at-bat of the game. But, man, with the bases loaded, the count 3-2, and 2 outs in the 8th inning, if you don't like the call, what are you going to do? You're going to challenge it.
And that is going to slow some things down for sure. His name is John Wagner. Find him on Twitter, John Wagner Sport. Johan, my friend, as always, partner, thank you so much for the time. We greatly appreciate you. Have a wonderful week, my friend.
Anthony, I hope you and your listeners have a great week as well.